Well, a little over 10 years ago, I did a series of videos called The Virtual Presidency, where I tried to solve some of America's problems, at least theoretically. And one of the things I realized was if you've got a dysfunctional system and you want to change it to a functional system, you can't just burn down the building until you make housing for the people who are already in this building that needs to be burned down. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and we've got an interesting example of this dynamic in play by what is probably the world's smartest man, Elon Musk. What I was referring to was if you have a population that is dependent on the government, a large percentage of the population dependent on the government, you cannot simply cut off aid to those people and turn them out on the streets. You have to find a way to get them into better housing, meaning you've got to get them self-dependent, because otherwise they're going to suffer and die and riot and all the rest of things. It just doesn't work. Well, I saw Elon Musk talking about waste in government. Now, he famously took over Twitter, turned it to X, fired 95% of the staff, and the company not only improved its bottom line, but actually performed better. Elon Musk, I saw, was talking about doing the same thing with the government, and he had a solution that when you first hear it kind of makes you a little irritated, maybe even angry, and then you instantly understand the genius of it. Steve, what Elon Musk was saying is we're going to go in there and we're going to fire a significant portion of the federal government, but we're going to give them incredibly long severance packages, like 2 years. Okay. He said, we're going to pay you for 2 years. You don't come to work anymore because you don't have a job anymore. But we're going to keep paying you for 2 years to go out there, do what you want, maybe take a break, relax, go on vacation. Plenty of time to find a new job. He went on to say, which I thought was brilliant, you will be much more productive in the private sector than you are in the public sector. That's good for the American economy. Yeah. But I thought, Steve, obviously my first reaction was, I don't want to pay these damn bureaucrats 2 years to do nothing. And then I said, no, wait a minute. When I was making the case for the virtual presidency, I said the best money we can possibly spend would be to pay every member of the House of Representatives $1 million a year and every senator $5 million a year to go to the Cayman Islands and stay there and do nothing but drink Mai Tais on the beach. This would be the best money we could spend for the federal government. And, and I think it's a genius solution.
And, Bill, that reminds me of something I came up with several years ago. It might have been on this show for reducing the amount of corruption in Washington, and that is to give every senator, every congressman, the president, and cabinet, and high-ranking military officers too. If you got a flag, if you get a star,
flag officers.
You get a very generous pension for the rest of your life. Your pension is you will never worry about another thing for the rest of your life. But any other source of income is taxed at 100%.
Love it. But we're talking about the immortal bureaucracy here.
Yeah.
He's talking, and see, this is the thing, right? It's the immortal bureaucracy, Steve, that keeps the deep state running. It's the immortal bureaucracy. And if you go in there and try and just throw the immortal bureaucracy out on the street, they are going to fight you tooth and nail, and they're going to sabotage the system and grind it to a halt.
Absolutely.
But by offering them basically a 2-year paid sabbatical, full paid, do whatever you want to, he is making it enormously easier for these people to just go away.
Yeah, they'll volunteer to leave.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't even have to fire them. So I love this idea, number one. Musk doesn't have a whole lot of bad ideas. It also cuts to the heart of what hamstrung Trump the first time around. We got 3 years of pretty good policy out of him up until COVID. And that was a miracle that we got the pretty good policy because the federal government was fighting him the entire way, just digging in exactly what you were talking about. Because we saw this happen. And Trump went in like a businessman thinking, okay, I'm the top dog in this executive branch. What I say goes, except it's not a business. It's a bureaucracy. And that's not how it works. The bureaucrats, these lifelong bureaucrats, they think, this guy will be gone in 4 years. I'm here for life. I'm going to do what I want, and that's how it works. So, in addition to Musk's idea of giving him 2-year severance, fine, we'll save money in the long run by far. We've got to get serious about restoring control of the executive branch to the executive, and that means, and I think I said this on our backstage for BillWhittle.com members earlier, is that every member of the executive branch, like it used to be, serves at the pleasure of the executive. The president should be able to fire anybody with or without cause because he is the guy held accountable by the voters. That's us.
Exactly.
That's
how the Constitution designed it.
Exactly. And what we tried to do during the progressive era was to make government competent, which is it's like trying to teach your dog how to whistle. This is not competence is not the government's competence. If you allow me to twist things up that way. And so we instituted these well-meaning progressive laws that protected the bureaucrats from the president. So what used to happen is a president would come in, he'd fire everybody, and he'd install his buddies with all these patronage jobs, and it was corrupt as hell. But it turned out to be a hell of a lot less corrupt than having a permanent bureaucracy.
Exactly. Because that's what the deep state is.
The solution was worse than the problem. I would much rather go back to a patronage system where even Joe frickin' Biden gets to install all of his cronies from top to bottom because they're only going to be there for 4 years, maybe 8. And then we get a whole new batch of cronies, and that's fine because they know these are patronage gigs and that they're only safe as long as they're doing what the president wants them to do. And the president is our representative, our only representative in the executive branch. So he's got to be able to fire anybody who's not doing what he wants because that's what we put him in there to do.
I think it's a great point, Steve. Scott, I think we're going to find that the idea of non-consecutive presidential terms is actually a very, very good thing for the Republic because, as you pointed out in one of the shows we did where I think we had technical errors, you said it's like taking away the halftime. If you have non-consecutive terms, you play the first half of the game, and then you get to go to the locker room and look at what you did right, what you did wrong, refine your strategy, go out in the second half of the game, and try and if you're losing, you change the strategy. If you're winning, you play to your strengths. Donald Trump came to the first half of his two-term presidency with a businessman's understanding of what the problem was. And he suddenly realized he had 10,000 major people to hire, 60,000 total people to hire, but 10,000 major positions to fill. He had no way to know who to pick for those things other than to say, this guy and this guy and this guy recommends this guy. And so he ended up with a lot of insiders. You've made the point, and it's unpopular to a lot of people because everybody wants to say just chuck all the bums out, but you can't chuck all the bums out because somebody has to know how to fill out the forms that make the government actually run. But what's really remarkable about this give them 2-year severance pay is it is an outside the box solution for an inside the box problem, don't you think?
Wow.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there are people, if anybody's listening to us right now who works in government, they're probably shaking their heads and going, these guys just don't understand the valuable work we do or the constraints under which we do it or the budget difficulties that we face and, how hard we work and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure, as most of us do, like we all feel like we're fighting some sort of historic battle at our workplace, even if we do something trivial like I do. And so, I think here's how I would offer that deal, by the way, the Musk idea of offer them a 2-year generous severance package is first, I would offer it to people and say, if you want to take the severance package, you can. So we do round one.
So you're not forcing people who don't want to go.
Yes. Then after round one is over, depending on the results of that, if you don't get adequate results, then you offer it again and say, if you want to take the severance package, you can. Starting next year, we're going to a merit pay-based compensation system. And we will use an outside auditor to evaluate the merit of each, how to measure the value of the work that you perform, and we will pay you strictly based on that measurement. And then, if you don't get results as adequate as you wish, then you would offer it a third and final time and say, you can take this 2-year severance pay option. After the cutoff date for this, the firings will begin. And so, you kind of ramp up the path to getting there. And ultimately, one of the greatest things I think I've ever seen Elon Musk say is that his strategy, his industrial strategy, his manufacturing strategy is basically don't try to improve things, because you can spend a great deal of time trying to improve something that shouldn't even exist in the first place, and you'll get very, very good at doing something that's very insignificant. He said his strategy is delete. Delete everything you can, and delete even more than you think is prudent, with the willingness to back it up and go, okay, well, we can restore about 10% of what we just deleted. You're better off if you go at an approach that says, we are going to simplify our mission, we're going to simplify the way we deliver our product, we're going to make it more efficient and more effective, not by just improving the process, but we're actually going to delete elements of it. In every organization in America, there are layers of bureaucracy that can be deleted with no harm to frontline service. And in fact, most frontline staff people know how to do their jobs without oversight from managers. If anything, managers get in the way of effective performance of the job. So that mindset that Elon Musk can bring to it, even if he's only an advisor, who gets on a video conference with the president every once in a while, will be tremendously helpful. It's alien to government, but that's why you give these nice people who have devoted their lives to public service, who are your next door neighbors, the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm not on board with this philosophy, this strategy, so I'm going to take that severance package and I'm going to go and spend a year hanging out on the beach in the Bahamas, and then I'm going to go volunteer time for a nonprofit organization and give of myself, and eventually I'll find a job in the private sector, or I'll just retire.
Well, Elon Musk famously said that the best part is no part. And I think you can basically apply that to the U.S. government and say the best bureaucrat is no bureaucrat. Now, you can, as Scott pointed out, you can go too far with this. You need a bureaucracy of some kind to handle something that is the size of the United States government. And even if your entire mission is to shrink the government, you will never shrink to the government even in the every conservative's dream government, the government that fits in the box that it came in. That government still requires a bureaucracy and people to actually handle the mechanics of how things actually get done. I think this idea of paying them, and Scott's idea about the gradation, where you take the low-hanging fruit first, the people who want to get out, that's great. This is how you do it with minimum collateral damage and minimal sabotage to the system, frankly, to be perfectly honest with you. But to think about the government this way, I'll just give you a real quick example, and that example is the Voyager aircraft that Burt Rutan built. He gave himself the challenge of building an airplane that could fly around the world unrefueled, and there's two ways to go with this. One way you go with this is to say we need an airplane that can carry a lot of fuel. Well, if it carries a lot of fuel, that means it's going to be heavy, so we have to add jet engines and bigger engines to it. The bigger engines can consume more fuel, which means we have to add more fuel tanks, which means an even bigger airplane, an even heavier airplane, which means we need even bigger engines, which consumes even more fuel, and there is no way to get there. That solution is a dead end. The only way to get there is to ask yourself, how much can we cut from this airplane? How light can we make it? The lighter we make the airplane, the less power it needs. The less power it needs, the less fuel it has to have. The less fuel it has to have, the lighter the airplane is. The lighter the airplane is, the less power it needs. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the Voyager, as an example, just as an example that's maybe more accessible to people, when Charles Lindbergh faced the same problem of getting the Spirit of St. Louis across the Atlantic, he was so obsessed with cutting weight that he would take his aeronautical charts that had a 1/4-inch white boundary around the outside, and he would clip that off with a pair of scissors, because the weight of that paper might have been an ounce, but it was an ounce that had to go. So what I'm saying is, you eventually, with the Voyager, got the minimum viable flying airplane, where Burt got to the point where he says, there is nothing else that we can take off of this aircraft and still have the aircraft do the mission. That is the theoretical, moral, constitutional idea of what the federal government should be. The bare bones, absolute minimum, lightest, cheapest, fastest version of getting done the things that the federal government is constitutionally obligated to do. And this idea, this out-of-the-box idea on how to handle the biggest inside-the-box problem, I think is absolutely genius. And when you think about the idea of paying people to do nothing, I'd be more than happy to pay the eternal bureaucracy of this country what they're getting right now to the day they die. if they would just not come to work. Honestly, it'd be worth every penny in a government that has $10 billion or $500 billion disappears as a rounding error. This is a way to actually burn down the deep state without people getting burned. Because if you are actually burning people and threatening their livelihood, they will react like cornered feral animals, and they will do what they need to do to defend their to feed their kids. And that's not a rhetorical flourish. That's how they see it, because that's fundamentally true. Ease them out of there, make them an offer they can't refuse, and see how many just willingly take the deal, and then say, finally, this is, as Scott pointed out. I thought that was brilliant, Scott. And ultimately, when it's all said and done, you don't want Elon doing the job. We just hire the two guys from Idiocracy. We just hire those two actors who go through the federal government one by one, person by person, lean forward and say, so what do you actually do
Office Space
here?
Office Space, yeah.
Office Space. Did I say
Judge
Idiocracy?
movie, yeah.
Sorry, yes. What is it that you do here? And if you can't answer the question, maybe you ought to take the 2-year severance pay. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Right Angle.